Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us here today. I hope you all had a chance to take a quick break between the sessions and have your coffee fix. So my name is Girija Bhagwatula. I'm the Senior PM on the Skype for Business server. The areas I focus primarily on are mobility. I have been with mobility for quite some time now. I started off with working on the client side first, and then MCX, and then UCIVA. So I've seen the progression from Link Server 2010 to Skype for Business server today. With me, I have Francois. He can introduce himself.
Thank you, Girija. Hi, everybody. It's great to have you here. Well-attended session. I know there is a lot of anticipation here. Hopefully, we can help a little bit. I'm part of the enterprise engineering team of the Skype Business Services product group, colleague with the like of Miru and Koshal, whom you might have seen yesterday. And I work with some of the strategic customers who are actually in the room here, helping them with some aspects of technical strategy and getting their feedback as well. And I'll be happy to work with Girija this afternoon.
All right, so with that, let's start off our session about mobility deployment and security with Skype for Business server. Quickly going over some logistics. I know you must have all seen this slide by now quite a few times, but it's a cool way to win a Surface Pro 3. So you can take a picture and tweet it from any of the slides from our session. So what is the session objectives? So at a high level, we would want, when you go out of the session, we want you to have a clear overview of what is available with Skype for Business for mobility. And in addition, you also have an understanding of how to plan and deploy mobility in your environment. And then Francois would also talk about the upcoming improvements with security and authentication controls. So like I said, this way you will have an understanding of how to go enable this service and how to secure it, and also plan for any upcoming improvements that come. So we already spoke about the agenda, so let me quickly go over. So what's new with mobility in Skype for Business server? So when we talk about mobility in Skype for Business server, first of all, it enables mobility for all the platforms. So whether it is the iPhone, Android, or the Windows Phone, it is a common platform that enables real-time communication for these devices. You can do app sharing, VoIP, audio or data collab across all the modalities. And especially when it comes to mobility, one of the key things we have to keep in mind is that we always optimize for battery and bandwidth. We are efficient on the wire in terms of how many notifications that are going out, for presence updates, incoming call, and we do not drain the battery for any such reason. So that's one of the key principles we have kept in mind, and this is the reason we have gone with the UCIVA, which is the RESTful approach to enable some of these features. And in addition, what we have done is mobility is actually part of the deployment of Link's Skype for Business server. You do not have to install a new service or manage a new service. It uses the common architecture that simplifies a lot of your steps. What is specific with mobility in terms of Skype for Business server is we heard a lot of feedback from our customers around the usability around mobile IM. We always had this issue that you would send an IM and it would not go to the user because he was on a mobile device. It would result either in an NDR, or it would end up if you had another endpoint, it would end up in your other endpoint. And if you took out your mobile device, you could not continue the conversation. So both Miru and Kaushal actually had a session yesterday where they did a deep dive. I will briefly cover this in one slide further down. In addition to this feature, the other feature which has been a big push for Skype for Business server is the Skype Federation. What we've allowed calling into a Skype client before, but it required you to have an MSA account and link that MSA account to your Skype account, and only a limited set of users were willing to do that. Whereas with now, we actually enable any Skype user who can, if you have a Skype ID, you should be able to search for that Skype user from your desktop client and add them to your buddy list. For mobile specifically, what we have enabled is that once these users are in your buddy list, you should be able to make a call to these users. And obviously, we'll talk about all the authentication improvements and the controls. So with that, instead of talking about these scenarios, let me do a quick demo. Let's move to here. Let's quickly unlock my device and, oh, sorry. All right, so as you can see, this is the familiar link client from before. We have not rebranded them yet. The new feature here that is available with Skype for Business is this added by note information. So any contacts that add you into your buddy list, they will start showing up in this special group. So as you can see, Amit and these folks have added me into their buddy list. So let me just, I also want to go ahead and add somebody to my buddy. I work very closely with Barak. So let me search for him, and then from here, I add contact. I want to add him to my favorites, and let me go back and see into my favorites, and soon you will see that Barak has been added into my buddy list. I also have the ability to remove him from a certain group or add him to a different group within my client. That's another new feature that we've added. So I also see Francois, who is there on the Skype client on his side. So let me see if I can make a video call to him. But you would notice that the video icon is right now turned gray. The reason for that is that if you go to my settings options, I have said that I want to make sure that video calls are made only over Wi-Fi and not over the LTE. I want to save some data. So that's the reason why the video is turned off, and I have my wireless off right now. So let me just quickly turn it on and come back to my mobile client. And let's see if I can make a video call now. So let's go ahead and place a video call to Francois, who is also on the Skype client right now. If you didn't notice the Skype, there was a Skype icon for him next to his name. There you go. So we have the video call going on between any of your Skype buddies. If they are on your buddy list, you can do it directly from your mobile client. The other feature which is interesting is around the conversation history. But we have done an extensive demos and all about it yesterday. So I would refer you to that session if you want to get details about how the whole feature works. Sorry. Let me just switch back quickly. Yeah, so in terms of the feature set, one of the key things that has been added is the ability to now have a synchronized view across your conversations, whether it's your desktop client or your mobile client or your tablet client. If you start a conversation on your mobile device or on your desktop, they would always be in sync. So if you go to the view, you can continue the conversation. If you got a missed IM, you can continue from a missed IM. And the thread and all continues. Even from the sender point of view, they get the full history. From the receiver point of view, one of the key, the cool advantages is that if, for example, I'm not paying attention to my phone or not clicking on that push notification, but the sender really doesn't know that, and they'll keep sending 2-3 messages quickly in concession. So if they send it in succession, the server, which is acting on behalf of the client, would auto-accept these messages and keep them in a cache so that when the client reconnects, it will just pass them down to the client, and you will have the full history view going forward. All right, so this should give you a view of all the clients. Skype for Business works across all platforms, so be it desktop client or the link for Mac or the smartphone, tablet, web, as well as there is the Skype for Business Web SDK was also released with this version. So you can now do development and build build using JavaScript APIs. You can mash them up into your web page. The 4 out of these clients use the same infrastructure, which is the UCIVA backend. And in fact, even the desktop now leverages some of the functionality provided by the UCIVA service to do certain features around call control and all. This is a quick glance of the mobility updates as they have been happening across the different years. We started off with Link Server 2010, and it was a pretty basic client with contact and presence and IM and just some basic calling features which used your PSTN network. After that, there was the Link Server 2013 release where we had not only the first release but also multiple CUs between them, where we added a bunch of features both in the server as well as client, which enabled all real-time communications, and as well as like features like anonymous join or the ability to view your PowerPoint, to do lobby controls, multi-view video, and etc. One of the features which has been kind of like a pain point for people in terms of usage is a lot of the times if you're using this call via work feature, users tend to forget to put their simul ring to mobile. And we've had that as a requirement in the past. We've heard a lot of feedback that, hey, I'm not getting my call, and we'll go back and say, are you sure you set your simul ring to mobile or not? But with this release, what we have done is we have decoupled those two. Even if you do not have the simul ring to mobile set, you would still be able to receive calls on your mobile device as long as you have at least provided the number as part of the first run experience. So the phone number is there with the service, and we make sure that the call gets handed off to the mobile clients. We already spoke about the features that are unique to Skype for Business Server, so I won't go about it in detail, and Francois would cover about the authentication improvements. And the other features are more like features under consideration. We plan to add them some point. I do not have any specific updates around that. So with that, let's move on to the next section around planning and deployment. But before I do that, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. You don't have to wait till the end. So feel free to ask any questions and stop us in between. All right, so go ahead. That's a very good question. Actually,
we should repeat it.
So the question was, when is Skype for Business Mac client releasing? We do not have a definite timeline. However, Ben and BJ's session, if you attended Ben and BJ's session, they had suggested some timeline around the end of the year where you can expect to have a client on Mac.
So deployment of the clients using the same of the universal apps or the new mobility Skype for Business client?
So the question is the deployment of clients using the universal app flow or not? The deployment of client itself is currently through the marketplace. The users can go download it. There's no ability to control that deployment as of now today, but there may be something in the future we look to add there. Yes, one more question and then we'll move on.
Are you considering any persistent chat client functionality in the mobile client?
That's a good question again. Everything, I do not have any firm timelines around that, but that's definitely a scenario. Groups has been a big push across Office, and and plus, like, we are looking at ways how to integrate the groups functionality and bring it across all the clients in terms of IM and providing a full persistent experience. So great question. I do not have any specific timelines around that. So talking about planning and deployment, how many of you have mobility deployed today? Awesome. Yeah. So how many of you were with 2010 mobility out of this? Okay, still quite a few.
You mean you're still on 2010 mobility today, or you started at 2010?
Started. But how many of you are still on 2010 then?
Okay.
Maybe one or two. Okay, good. So that's actually good to know that a lot of you have already deployed it. So maybe you can help me through this next section because you're very familiar with it. So let's talk through what were some of the deployment goals. Like I said, it uses the common API and infrastructure both for mobile and web. And as you saw the diagram, as we are adding more and more new clients, we are actually trying to leverage the same infrastructure, the same principles for all our platforms. And as I said, it is the same setup, so no additional steps are needed. When you go deploy your Skype for Business, UCIVA service gets deployed automatically just like any other web service there. We also abstract any complexities around whether you are connecting to online or on-prem. Auto discovery plays a big role in trying to redirect the traffic. And obviously, we support hybrid scenarios as well. And yeah, the advantage that comes with using a common infrastructure that is that whatever tools you've been using around security, performance, all those can be reused for all the clients, for all the services, including mobility. So this is, at a high level, a quick view of how mobility architecture looks like. On the right side, I have a mobile client which is connecting over a reverse proxy. This client is external. It is connecting over reverse proxy to the link server. And in addition, I have another client which is actually connecting from internally, but even if it is connecting internally, it actually goes via the reverse proxy, via hairpinning, back to the link server. The primary reason why we have this requirement is to provide a better user experience, because as we switch between the internal, external networks or between Wi-Fi to 3G, we want to have a seamless experience for the user on their mobile devices, and that's the reason for that requirement. Let's look at how the media itself flows in case of a VoIP call. If the desktop user is talking to the mobile client which is connecting internally, then the media flows peer-to-peer. In this case, it flows between the desktop and the mobile client directly. In case the mobile client, this user is talking to another user who is outside, the media would flow over the edge server in this case. All right. The other way the media is handled is for the example I was talking about, call via work. So in case VoIP is not enabled or does not work for some reason because the user is moving between networks, in that case, we also have this notion of where the call is placed over the PSTN channel. In this case, the desktop user places a call, and here I have just shown the media flow, but the call actually would first come to the link server, which would start the signaling channel, and to the mediation server. From the mediation server, the call will be placed via the gateway to the cellular network back to the device. And the media itself traverses this whole flow. The last point is around the push notifications. We continue to support push notifications with Skype for Business server. This is the means of receiving your incoming calls on your Windows Phone devices. So in this particular case, if the desktop user is is sending a IM or a call to the mobile user, that SIP invite first will go to the link server. Link server intercepts it and converts it and sends it over the internet, connects to the link push notification service, which in turn connects to the Microsoft push notification service and delivers it to the mobile device here. So this diagram gives you the overall components that are involved in the system. I mentioned something about UCIVA. I mentioned something about discovery service. On the right-hand side, we have the mobile client. There is the media manager, which does the media processing locally for the mobile client. And we also have the app layer, which does all the business logic on top of that. The very first step involves auto discovery. And like I said, the mobile client needs to be handling this internal, external, both. So for auto discovery, we require you to publish both an internal as well as an external address. And once the discovery happens, this is the Discover service which helps with it. Once the discovery is done, it returns you a fully qualified domain name, the fully FQDN of UCIVA service. And then the client would connect directly from the mobile client will connect directly to the UCIVA service, and then the address that is published for UCIVA is actually the external address. That's the only address that is published. There is no internal address that needs to be published for UCIVA. And then on the other side, UCIVA internally is actually built on a component called UCMA, which converts all the HTTP to the SIP side so that the rest, it connects to and interacts with the rest of the ecosystem. And I think we already spoke about, the third part here is around the eventing notifications. We use the same HTTP channel to send out any notifications for clients such as iOS or Android and Android clients. This happens via this notification channel. There is no dependency on push notification services for them, at least for now. And the media in this case flows directly over. So what are some things to consider when you are deploying mobility? Like I said, you need to publish both the internal and external DNS records for discovery so that the client can figure out whether it's internal or external, and there are some optimizations it can do based on that. The discovery traffic is, in case of hybrid, also you first actually connect to the on-prem service, on-prem deployment, and the discovery starts there. From there, if the user is actually homed in online, the user is redirected to online. This also requires you to configure a certain step where you set up the link online information through a hosting provider, run a commandlet, and you need to do that. Both these steps that I talked about, they should not be specific to mobile, because discovery service is also used by the Skype for Business client. It's being used for Link Client 2013 as well. So these steps you would have anyway done as a course of enabling those clients, and it's not an extra step for mobility, just for mobility. The third one is around setting up your reverse proxy. We talked about doing the hairpinning, where you want to enable this seamless experience for the mobile user when he moves from the internal to external networks. And lastly, around the edge server, you have to deploy an edge server, especially around enabling if you want to have the AV traffic go externally, as well as if you want to enable push notifications, that also goes through the edge server. A note around load balancer is probably not so relevant anymore, maybe because majority of you are on 2013. With 2010, we used to have a cookie-based persistence, which required you to deploy a level 5 load balancer. But now we have the web infra, which handles all the proxying of the traffic, so you don't need to deploy those anymore. Yes, please?
One question. Maybe I understood wrong, but do you actually require link discover records also in internal networks, or link discover internal?
The question is, do we need a link discover internal records to be published? No? Link discover internal networks? Yes, you do need. So you do need to publish both the link internal as well as external. And even if you had just an internal network, you have to go through the process of discovery.
Yeah, I know. I mean, in internal networks, I set up link discover internal.
Yes.
Should I also do the main link discover in internal networks?
You have to do both as far as mobility is concerned, yes. We don't support an internal-only setup for mobility.
Have in the future a chance that the mobility client for the internal use, that's where we have today no DEC infrastructure solution. The most end customers search for that. So the mobility client help us, but the first thing is I must today have a reverse proxy to use the internal side.
Yes.
So, and see you a chance that Microsoft switched the same as the normal link client with internal external. When I have a wireless internal side, I not go to the outside way to the reverse proxy. I go directly to the front end. I'm a normal internal client.
Do you want, sorry, just to repeat the question. So you are saying that you're just an internal client and you do not want to go through the reverse proxy. Do you want to enable the external access as well or not?
It's the same as our internal or external link client as a soft client.
So we do not support today an internal-only deployment for mobile clients. That was supported before, I believe, with the first version of mobility service. It has been an ask from customers. Actually, like it would be a by good raise of hands. How many of you would want to? Sorry, I'm doing a quick check. But how many of you would be interested in such a feature of where we actually restrict the mobility clients to only internal? I get that, and maybe we can chat offline as well, but that requirement is also to enable the good handoff because the client does move between the two networks. Thanks a lot. I'll move on. I'll take the question in a bit, or if it's related to this topic, yes. Okay.
So you mentioned a couple of times seamless movement from internal to external. From experience, it's been if you're on a link client mobile, on a voice call, you go from the internal network to external, it drops.
Yes.
And you gotta reconnect.
Yes.
Is that not resolved? Is it intelligent enough to look forward and say my Wi-Fi's dropping?
No, no. The question was that is the experience seamless enough to go through my voice call and give me that continued experience as I move with my voice call between the various networks? Great feature, something which is in our roadmap, but not yet supported with Skype for Business Server. So with that, let's do a quick view of various clients and server interop. Not relevant to some of you because maybe the Link 2010 clients are not there that much. So the Link 2010 client still connects. We still support Link 2010 clients to connect against Link Server 2013 as well as Skype for Business 2015. It works against the older versions of Windows OS as well as the latest one on the Windows Phone 8.1. One point I do want to make for the few of you who are using Link Server 2010 and the mobility service with that, this is the last version. We will be supporting it because it's part of the N-2. We are looking at deprecating this feature, deprecating the support of Link 2010 clients with the next version. If you look at the Link 2013 clients, these continue to be supported against both the Link Server 2013 as well as the Skype for Business 2015 server. There is a different version of the client actually in Windows Store. This is only specific to Windows, not for iOS and Android, which takes advantage of the latest features that are available on the Windows Blue. As a result, there are two versions of the client. Going forward, when we do release Skype for Business mobile clients, which is there in the plans, sometime around fall timeframe is when we are looking to update those. During that time, you will end up with two clients in the marketplace, one which is the Link 2013 version and one which would be the Skype for Business version, which works on Blue. This just gives you a quick view of what are the errors and all you would expect to see if you connect with an incompatible version or an older client connects to a newer version where you get prompts to say, hey, a newer version is available, maybe you want to upgrade. Or if the mobility is disabled by the admin, then what type of notifications or errors you would see. So when you're planning for capacity, so I know I mentioned in the beginning that the same infrastructure actually is powering almost 4 out of 6 platforms. So if you think about capacity planning for mobility, you have to kind of start thinking more holistically because this is the same UCIVA service which would power your mobile clients, your tablets, your ELVA experience, as well as all the Web SDK scenarios which we are bringing forward now. In addition, if you also have this feature called RCC, which is now being replaced with Call via Work for desktop, Skype for Business desktop clients, then that particular feature also leverages the UCIVA service. So keep in mind that all the various workloads that will be there when you plan for mobility. In terms of steps, it's pretty straightforward in the sense that you have to estimate your mobile usage. What does the user model look like? How many IMs do these people send? How often do they? What type of a device is in use, whether it's a Windows Phone or an iPhone, because they have different characteristics. and then measure your current capacity in terms of like how many users you have currently deployed and how many users you plan to enable mobility for, and measure the available memory and CPU information there. The next step involves actually planning for additional capacity. The key point here is that when you plan for additional capacity, you have to keep in mind the failover information, because if a server fails over, then that load gets distributed across to other servers or other FEs. So you need to plan for that extra additional capacity when you're doing your capacity management. And then lastly, there is once you have deployed everything, you have to continuously monitor the various perf counters to see how many concurrent sessions are going on, and if it goes up or down, you can go back and readjust some of this. Yes?
When you log into the mobile client through the reverse proxy, is it a persistent connection that's always there?
The question is, when you log in from your mobile client, is the connection through the reverse proxy, is the connection persistent? The answer to that is depends upon the client. Because the reason it depends upon the client, I didn't have that particular slide here, but if you look at the iOS client or the Android client, the way they handle notifications, where I was talking about the notifications being delivered by the HTTP channel, yes, in that case, they have a long-held pending HTTP request to the UCIVA service, which gets released every time a notification comes. And even when these apps are in the background, both these OSs have a notion of a background socket or a background agent that is running, and that agent is responsible for whenever that HTTP connection is released because of notifications come out, they start and park a new HTTP request there. So the connection is generally alive. In case of Windows Phone, it is different because it uses a different technology, and because when the app goes into the background, the app is no longer running, and there is no pending GET request that is maintained. The connection is completely lost. From the server side, what we do instead is we know that the user has signed in. We keep the session alive for the user, and in case a notification comes in, then we rehydrate that session and deliver the notifications via the push notification channel instead. So it depends upon the platform, really. Okay, so with that, a quick set of steps. The steps that are really involved are installing the Skype for Business server, and if you have already done that, there is no additional steps or setup things that you need to go over to deploy UCIVA as a service, because it's deployed by default. In terms of mobility policies, so these are like I said, you may want to plan your capacity and all that, so that this policy helps you to control the rollout of mobility. So by default, it is on. Everybody has mobility. But if you want to control it, this policy enables you to do that. The other step is around if you have to support Windows Phone applications, then you have to configure the push notification we talked about. And the last step is around running a synthetic transaction to verify that the deployment is running okay. If you are a Skype for Business online user, there is really no additional steps required. As long as you have it running for your Skype for Business desktop clients, then your mobility should work out of box. With that, I will hand it off to Francois to cover the authentication and control.
Thank you, Girija. Earlier, Girija asked you to raise your hand if you were already using mobility, and many hands were raised, actually, very exciting. A few of you didn't raise your hands, and I'd like to ask you, if you don't mind, those of you who did not, if the reason you're not using it is related to what we're going to be discussing now, please raise your hand. Yeah, there's quite a few hands as well. Okay, well, then we won't skip that topic today. So, in talking to quite a few of you, and I recognize a lot of folks in the room, essentially we heard the same three themes coming back in many of your conversations. The three things that you ask of us that will show how we're doing so far, which is not that great, we'll see that. And hopefully we'll, by the end of this session, show you that we're making progress along the three dimensions. The first one is secure authentication. Your expectations increasingly, and ours as well, by the way, within Microsoft, are that people will more and more do multi-factor authentication, and in some cases it's blocking. The second aspect is you want to know how we handle the data that's on the device, and you want to have specific controls over that data. In particular, the ability to remove it from the device if the person leaves the company or those kind of things, ensuring that it's also encrypted and so on. And the third aspect is, in many cases, you want only specific devices to be used for that access. And that's not something that we've been doing. So if we look at the same three topics, if you will, in Link Mobile 2013, I would give us not really passing grade against the three things. Doesn't mean it cannot be deployed, doesn't mean it cannot be used, and we have a lot of people using it, including ourselves, but we want to improve, and we know that we want to improve. On secure authentication, it's NTLM as the primary mode, and that's also something that's required for Exchange Web Services if you want to see your calendar, if you want to see the meetings that you have there. And actually, we even have to, if we want to continue showing the Exchange Web Services capabilities on an ongoing basis, store the password on the device, or re-enter it every few hours, which is painful. We introduced another authentication mechanism in Link 2013, which is called Link Passive Authentication. It will still be supported in Skype for Business Server 2015. We found that even though it does solve the core issue of not having to use NTLM, it was very rarely and scarcely deployed. Some of the reasons for that is that it's complex, that it actually requires a set of skill sets, and it's not very well packaged. You really need to do a lot of fairly intricate work to get there. It's also a single workload thing. It's kind of a silo. It's something we did for Link and actually solved the problem for Link, but doesn't solve the Exchange Web Services issues. So it kind of puts us in this interim situation. We're providing an improvement in Skype for Business Server, which we are also looking at backporting to Link 2013, Link Server 2013, which is a so-called hint. Yesterday, Kaushal described that. I won't go into detail, but that's a great way to essentially restrict Link Passive Authentication to mobile clients only. With respect to protecting corporate data on device, one of the things that we have today, and I hope we have time afterwards for Georgia to show us some of the policies that we have in Link Mobility. We do have policies to, for example, prevent conversation history in Link 2013 from being on the device. Now, the counterpart to that is it's very unwieldy because you have no clue what conversations you just had, or in some cases, if you miss a notification, you even don't know from whom. So that has functional impact. We are solving this as well going forward with the server-side conversation history, and as well yesterday, Kaushal and Miru described that. With respect to encryption, there are very broad varieties of how encryption works across mobile platforms. For Android, for example, the only way you encrypt is if you encrypt the entire device. And that's a very impactful type of choice that, it might actually impact performance if people do gaming on their device and so on. That might be a concern. And we have felt uncomfortable with forcing that encryption. So if it's there, we use it, but we are not always able to do it. On the other hand, on iOS, since whatever version that is, kind of July 2014, we're now able to leverage that if there is a PIN protection on the device, and so on and so on. So each version was a little bit different. Part of the complexity is when you were asking us straight, well, is my data always going to be encrypted? We didn't have a good way to answer in an unambiguous yes, we can enforce it, we can promise to you. That was dependent on platform circumstances and so on. And we don't have capabilities for remote wiping and so on in the application. On conditional access, no capabilities out of the box, and no integration of Microsoft mobile clients, of Link mobile clients with third-party MDMs. So that's very clear we didn't have anything there. We have a number of partners who've been providing some interesting solutions that have, in some cases, unblocked deployments. And actually, I'd like to also ask for a show of hands. Who's using any partner around mobility deployment to either facilitate in authentication or any of the other aspects? Yeah, that's quite a few, maybe a dozen or so, maybe probably more actually, probably more like 15 or so, yeah? So not everybody, but obviously there is a need for that in some cases. And in particular in the authentication space, there's quite a few solutions there that are actually quite effective, may not always be transparent on the point of view of the user experience, but at least there are solutions out there. With respect to the two other topics, the way this has been addressed and increasingly is being addressed is by using our protocol and APIs and exposed capabilities, and mostly protocols, in reconstructing clients, third-party clients that are natively integrated into MDM or MAMs, which is also kind of unwieldy, but some customers have done that, and that can be done, and it's out there as well. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Wow. Well, let's carry on. So anyway, those situations that we are in right now, they're usable, but probably not particularly delightful. And we want to go well beyond that. So we've decided to make a very significant investment in the space. And one of the things we want to do is we want to make this not as Skype for Business in a silo, but as a cross-Microsoft initiative. And that's the way that we actually can have much faster progression, something that ends up being continuous scenarios between Exchange and us and other applications, and something that has a chance of adoption eventually. So and also something that works across on-prem and online. We believe in this way. We can fulfill the 3 requirements that we've heard from the market. Now, we're also very aware that in some cases, you might have made decisions already of investments that will conflict with that. We'll discuss that in a second. So the first thing I want to announce today is that we are going to be delivering, and I'm going to be specific about timeframes in a second, multi-factor authentication in Skype for Business Mobile, leveraging something called ADAL, and I'm going to describe what ADAL is in a second. Just from a specifics point of view, we want this to be in the Skype for Business mobile client at the time of launch, which Ben Canning yesterday mentioned to be fall of this calendar year. We do already have implementation in the Windows client, and we want to progressively put it in other clients. This is actually very important, the second point here. This is the same approach that other clients in Office are following. Many of you might be aware of that, actually. To the extent you work mostly around Link, you may or may not have seen that, but many of your enterprises or colleagues might already be working on this from the point of view of Exchange. I would like to point you to the blog at the bottom. We actually are in public preview in Office 365 at this point for ADAL capabilities. Not every client, and in particular not every mobile client supports it, and in particular the Link mobile client doesn't support it, so you cannot test it with Link. But you can already kick the tires on that capability, on ADAL, on the basis of other solutions within Office. And when we're done with this, when all is said and done, all of the applications within Office will be natively supporting it. This is also a platform, and I'll say a little bit more about that, because the intent is that every one of your applications will also be able to support it natively by integrating a very simple SDK. Just from a user experience point of view, this is something, I mean, this is logging into Word, you know. In this case, you would be redirected. And one of the things you might see here, if I have a pointer somewhere, I guess I have one, yes. This is actually a multi-step verification. There's going to be a variety of verification options, and those can be, and I'll show you a couple of those can be based on smart card, virtual smart card certificates on devices. Those can actually be based on a verification through an additional step. For example, based on a mobile app on your device, or based on receiving a call and entering a PIN and being verified through that. So that's a great way to have a range of things that are pre-built that you can use. It's an SDK you can integrate into your own native apps and integrate that in manner to have single sign-on across all of the apps, including Office, and even your custom apps, third-party apps. So I encourage you to visit that. And yes, I wanted to do a demo, but we've had so many issues with network that I've actually chickened out. And sorry. So what you have here is kind of what I would have demoed on a screen-by-screen basis. I mean, and this is actually now implemented within Microsoft MSIT. We've actually changed our standard, I think around January or February, mandating multi-factor authentication within MSIT. And the way we do this is in particular this. Now, if we have a virtual smart card on the device, you're going to see by default a prompt that's actually going to suggest you use the virtual smart card. You can change the modality. On the other hand, if you are on a device that doesn't support virtual smart card or there's none, then what you're going to see is a prompt here. You can put your corporate credentials, but it's going to suggest you sign in with phone authentication. Now, this screenshot was taken at a time we had the choice. Now, the policy has now been completely enforced. We don't have the choice anymore, so you don't have 2 buttons anymore. But you sign in with phone authentication. You get this screen that essentially says, we're verifying you. On your mobile device, depending on options that have been set forth, and those could actually, those mobile devices typically have been verified, the phone number has been verified, and so on. There is a process for that. You are going to get a notification on this type of pop-up, and you enter your secret PIN, and once you've done that, close, and you are authenticated, verified, and you use the application. Interesting things, your password is only verified once you've actually been used once you've been verified. So that actually prevents things such as brute force attacks, those kind of things. Yeah? The other thing I like is this, deny and report fraud. You actually have an opportunity now to use this tool for your end users to report, to inform you when there are mass attacks. From an infrastructure point of view, very conceptual, not very refined here, but here's what you have. So you have your mobile device here, it's going to sign it. Of course, it's going to try and talk to the Skype for Business server through the reverse proxy. Skype for Business is going to say, I recognize that I'm no longer the party that's going to authenticate you. I'm going to redirect you to ADFS. So redirecting the client, go talk to ADFS. ADFS is going to challenge you. Once that's being done satisfactorily, you get a token, OAuth2 token, that you can then go present here. Once you've presented it to Skype for Business server, which trusts ADFS, obviously, we're going to issue you a web ticket as we used to do before. At that point, everything is the same as before. Now, advantage, of course, Skype for Business server trusts it, but Exchange as well. So you don't need now to have this discontinuity between what you do for Skype and what you do for Exchange. Single sign-on across application is part of these capabilities. This is a variant of it when you are in a hybrid mode, where essentially what would happen is ADFS would redirect you to Azure Active Directory for those type of things. Essentially, same concept, works in hybrid, works in online, works on-prem. So that was for the authentication piece. Any questions at this stage before I move on to other aspects? So the question was about using biometrics in the same type of circumstances. Is that fair? Yeah. So this is an extensible platform. And actually, at that point, the question becomes a question not for the Skype for Business team, but for the ADFS team and EDAL and what they want to support there. I'm not the right person to answer that, but I have some indications that, yes, they're looking at biometrics as well. And again, extensible, something that then can be used as an SDK across everything, and single sign-on across applications. Okay? So with respect to data at rest, data on the device, and what we are doing in the space, there's going to be two levels. I'm going to first tell you what we do natively in the app, and then I'm going to tell you how that works as well if you have MDM-MAM, Intune as MDM-MAM. So because of this kind of vagueness we were on around encryption, where we depended essentially on the settings that the user had set for their own device, unless, well, at least for Android, that was the case. We've decided that we wanted to give you a tool to ensure that there was encryption. So there's going to be a policy implemented on the server that's going to give you, as the admin, the opportunity to say, thou shalt encrypt, or else. And at that point, we'll be able to say, well, you must, if you're on iOS, set a PIN protection, which then forces encryption, or we are able to use encryption. And if you're on Android, going to have to encrypt the entire device. We feel like it's a much better situation than us mandating that your end users would encrypt their device, for privacy and those type of reasons. There's many countries in which it would be difficult for us to enforce that. But for your own users within the contract you have with them, you might decide that you're able to do that. So we give you the tool to enforce that. And we also give you a second tool. Some of you have real BYOD, where there's literally nothing on the device. And while you might suggest to the end user that they put a PIN on the device to protect the device, you may not be able to enforce it. So we're also introducing an application level PIN, which also by policy you can push to the application and enforce that that application content would be protected, would be encrypted and protected by a PIN. Now, the vast majority of you might have the opportunity to ensure that the device itself is protected by a PIN. That may not be needed, but there's at least the opportunity to do that if you're not sure that the device would be protected itself.
So there's no option to only encrypt the link and not encrypt the device?
That depends on the platform. From an Android point of view, that's a limitation that we're not able to get around at this point. And that's not a specific link or Skype for Business answer. It's kind of a generic answer as far as I understand.
Yeah, we have that problem now with some Samsung phones models, and we were hoping that that would be resolved, with SFP.
By the way, I have T-shirts here. I'm going to have to throw them out. Yeah, the question was about can we encrypt specifically the application itself? And sorry, I forgot to repeat it. So before I move on, I'm going to start talking about conditional access. Conditional access, I'm going to tell you that we're going to be working on Intune quite a bit. I want to point out that, of course, through an MAM type of setting, you can do the same type of things, enforce encryption, and so on. Where there is no Intune, we'll get this through Skype for Business server policies. We're going to have exactly the same encryption, the same things done if you have Intune through Intune. So we're using exactly the same implementation, if you will, two different ways to arrive at it depending on which you have implemented. So it's not going to be two different encryptions if you happen to use Intune as opposed to if you happen to use this. So conditional access. We're also announcing that we're integrating Skype for Business Mobile with Intune natively, which is a very intricate piece of work because, again, we're trying to look at it at the type of policy level, the type of policies that we would be using for encryption or for PIN protection, making sure that they're converged and use the same type of implementation as the MDM policies. So that's why we have that type of native integration, if you will. In the same time frame, at the same time when we launch Skype for Business Mobile, we anticipate and we plan and we want to have Intune integration as well. Here as well, this is not an isolated choice. This is the same choice that's being made throughout Office 365. And if you get a quick look at the last link, it's actually already done to a very large extent by our colleagues in Exchange, so you can already start kicking the tires on that as well. So quite a few of you, this is not working to my liking. So quite a few of you use third-party MDMs and we're keenly aware of it. And I get that question quite frequently, what do we do for third-party MDMs? And I know I'm going to disappoint a few of you, so I'm ready for that. Steal myself a little bit. We have no plans to integrate with third-party MDMs, or MAMs, actually. And there's a range of reasons for that, but eventually the primary reason is that the MDM market is massively fragmented. When we started searching the market and researching how many integrations we would have to do, it looks like we would have to do probably in excess of 15. There's regional ones, there's different ones by industry. It's very, very expensive from that point of view. And so in order for us to be able to continue to have the innovation that Gerisha represented, the type of things that you want from a functionality point of view, we couldn't do both. So we decided to go in that direction and to put the entire investment behind doing it Intune right, have the complete native integration, and continue to invest in features instead. There are, and I mentioned that earlier, third-party clients that are increasingly being integrated into MDMs. I'm aware of 2 or 3 at this point, implementations. I'm not going to say that, to my liking, they would be the long-term solution. They could represent a bridge while you're on your current MDM and work on getting to Intune, because I think that's the eventual recommendation that we would like to give you. And we can work with you on some of those aspects. We have some experiences in that space. But the short answer here, and I know that question is going to come up in the Q&A or even now, there is no path to supporting MDMs, third-party MDM solutions. The only one we're going to be natively integrated with is Intune. questions at this stage? I have nice T-shirts. Yeah. Yes?
Is a multi-factor authentication based off multi-factor authentication mechanism for Azure that you use with Office 365 or fully separate?
So the question was, is the multi-factor authentication based off Azure or is it different? we'll find a better way.
Yeah.
That was version 1.
At least I woke up everybody.
Yes, so the implementation is based on ADAL, which is implemented in Azure Active Directory, but we absolutely intend to have an on-prem implementation as well. Okay, moving on. Most of you know Intune much better than I do, so I'm not going to belabor the point here. This is just in case you've never seen anything about Intune, which I guess probably is not the case. But that's the type of things that, from an MDM point of view, you can anticipate. The ability to have detection of rootkitting, the ability to require password, the length of the password in the specific aspects of number of sign-in, those type of things. The admin controls and device reporting. Eventually, I think Intune and other MDMs might be eventually pretty comparable in many dimensions. There's two things that I believe will be very different from our point of view. The native integration into Skype for Business will give us the ability to have very deep policy integration. And not just policy, but implementation of policy integration. And the other one is the ability to support hybrid and online scenarios, which I think is going to make a very substantial difference here. I encourage you to look at Intune because that's, for better or worse, the path that we're going to be riding over the next few months.
With Intune or without Intune, right? Is there client who support, like, I can't do desktop sharing when I'm on a mobile device, I can't view it, but I could do the desktop sharing on a, if I'm on a thick client, I'm doing something sensitive, right? I don't want people to screen capture and stuff.
So the question is, are there going to be, regardless of the Intune aspects, policies to differentiate functionalities across devices? I'll let Girish answer. Part of the answer is we already have some of that.
So actually, we do not have across devices like
Then
disable it for iPhone or disable it for Android. But there are overall policies. These are not specific to mobile, but there are policies where you can control certain features are available to certain users. But we do not have a policy where we say, let me disable app sharing for this user. We do have policies for VoIP, but not for app sharing or data collab on mobile devices. So the policies are more around which data network to use rather than the security aspect.
So the CS mobile policies that we're going to be looking at, there is specific policies around, for example, disabling or changing things that you can do from a contact list, from a IM history, a messaging history point of view. So there's already differentiated policies. That's what I was pointing to and wanted to refer to. Indeed, we don't have that for specific modalities like this. We should look at feedback and capture feedback on modality by modality.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Didn't work.
Okay, glad we don't play football.
Yeah. Oh.
Regarding the client release, you mentioned it would be available to the fall. Is there any fidelity lost by using the 2013 client and upgrading the server right now and not premise?
No, the clients are actually you get an update almost every month for the client. We've been trying to keep as agile as possible on that front. In terms of functionality, in fact, I didn't mention before, but conversation history is actually being rolled out in O365 Skype for Business Online, as well as with Skype for Business Server, you have it. And the clients in market today already support it. So once you have it enabled for you, it should work for you. So in terms of fidelity loss, you shouldn't have any loss of functionality.
So let me finish this section because I think we're kind of questions are moving a little bit off the section. So I don't even remember whether I went through this or not, but this is relatively probably very well known of people who understand the topology. You have a network device enrollment server here with its certificate server. You have configuration manager here, which is going to be used to manage in particular your domain join devices. in partnership with Azure. So you have actually a continuity of management here across all devices, on-prem, online, domain join, third parties. And in that case, of course, the same type of process initially from the point of view of the sign-in and the management of the device through Intune here in the cloud. With this is kind of the end of the section on authentication and controls. I'd like to very briefly summarize what we covered. We're going to be in in fall, sorry. Don't listen to that. That was completely inaccurate and false. In fall 2015, we're going to be releasing Skype for Business Mobile with the intent and with actually the commitment to support ADAL authentication and Intune integration in order to support conditional access, content management, wiping, those kind of things, and encryption, obviously, I mentioned, and multi-factor authentication. Thank you. Oh, well, we're not done.
Yeah, all right. So we have one more section, which is about all the policies as IT admins you may want to control. Instead of going over each of these policies, let me actually quickly take you to the PowerShell command that I have. So for example, here I have like a SE machine with one FE and an edge server. Let's look at the policies which are interesting to you. So the first one, which is you may want to look at, is around conversation history.
Don't leave us.
So conversation history is, let's see what the setting is. It is enabled by default. So when you deploy when you deploy the Skype for Business server, so conversation history would be enabled in terms of a configuration. It would be enabled across the deployment. In addition, we also have client level policies. So if you see get CS client policy, I say identity global. In this particular case, for example, if I, let me just get the marker. In this particular case, it is turned false. So what you can do is quickly go and do enable it for everyone, client policy, identity, global, and enable server side conversation history and set it to true. All right, so with that, I have now enabled the conversation history for all my users in the deployment. In addition, the other policies, obviously there are other client policies not specific to mobile, but which I won't go into. The ones which are interesting for your mobile client will be all under the CS mobility policy. If you want to take, these are policies which would be applicable mainly for mobile clients. We do not have, like I mentioned, we do not have specific policies for iPhone versus Android and all.
I think we have a question.
Right, so do you have a separate policy for mobile client and the port line on the desktop for the conversation history?
Not, so actually that's a great question. Let me repeat the question. Do you have a separate policy for the thick clients conversation history versus the mobile clients? So the way you should think about conversation history is that with this release, we have enabled server-side conversation history. So till now, all the clients used to write. So that, for example, the desktop client directly connects to Exchange and writes history. With this release, we have enabled server to write history. However, right now, the server is doing this action only for the mobile clients. It is not writing history for desktop. So desktop continues to write history directly to Exchange. So this policy of enable server-side conversation history will not affect any of the clients which are not taking advantage of the server-side features. As we add more clients which take advantage of this feature, then those policies, like the client-side policy that you saw, will start affecting all the clients which are moving towards the server side. So that's the reason why the policy today resides in the client policy as opposed to being a specific policy under mobile. So what are some of the interesting policies under mobility? Let's quickly go over some of them. So I mentioned that you may want to control the rollout of who has mobility based upon your capacity. So one way you can do that is to run the enable mobility. By default, these are true for all users, but you have the ability to control that. Similarly, you can control whether a user is enabled for VoIP and or not. Again, by default, this is true. One more policy that you may consider is the enable outside voice. This you may want to control based upon the mediation server requirements and the load that you have planned there. So based on that, you may or may not want to enable this for everybody, but you have an ability to control this. These two features, which are around the require Wi-Fi for audio and require Wi-Fi for video, maybe this, for some reason, there is also the require Wi-Fi for sharing also. I don't have that updated here. But these, what they allow you is, as an IT admin, if you want to make sure that your users are not doing VoIP or video or sharing on your data networks, then you can make sure that you enforce it. Like in the example demo that I showed you, I as a user was having that control. In addition to user controls, there are also the admin controls. Some of the other, actually there is a require Wi-Fi. It was just not ordered appropriately. In addition, the other ones are allow exchange connectivity. So this one is actually in line with what Francois' talk was about. We heard that, hey, because we didn't have single sign-on, people didn't want to save the exchange credentials. So as a result, the exchange experience of connecting to meetings and all that was never working on the mobile device for many users. So what customers wanted to do was to disable that exchange experience completely so that the user has a better view of the UI and all. So this policy was allowing them to do so. Saving of credentials and saving of IM history, these are specific policies where you do not want anything to be saved on your device. So switching back quickly to...
I think we have a question now.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me repeat the question. If I don't get it right, correct me. Is server-side conversation history still supported if you are in Exchange Online user? Yes. If you are a Skype for Business server on premises and Exchange Online users, then yes, it will be supported for you. And I believe if you are using UCS for your contacts and all, you would have already set up all the necessary OAuth requirements between the two. Yeah, so let me switch back to my...
I think there's more questions. Do you want to give us a couple of minutes to try and go through this section? And we're getting close to the Q&A part of it anyway. So.
Yeah, I have just one or two things to cover, and then we are done. So I think we already talked about the various policies that you have the ability to. So we have server-side conversation history. You can control mobile usage, enterprise voice usage, and data. And Windows Phone was one thing we didn't talk about. So given that the IM and all is actually sent over the push notification channel outside your enterprises, some companies we have heard that they have concern because the actual message goes through outside their network and onto the Microsoft push notification services. So if you have concerns, you have the ability to turn push notifications off as well. However, it has the downside that if you turn it off, then you lose the ability to receive any incoming IM or any incoming call onto the device. The only way you would receive it would be through a PSTN call at that point. All right, so I kind of covered the demo. We talked about the conversation history policies that are available. So it's supported for all users who have Exchange 2013 and higher, and as well as Exchange Online. And the other one interesting thing that you should be aware of is that for any reason, if conversation history is disabled, whether because of policy or because of having an older Exchange server, in all those cases, the behavior will fall back to the previous version, which is like you will get the IM, only the first IM, you will not do an auto accept, and we will not write the conversation history to Exchange. So it will basically fall back to the previous experience. Yes?
If you're monitoring of when a connection is broken or other things, that the history is also secure for that.
Okay. Can I actually park this question? We'll come back to it. Let's just quickly close on the rest of the things. This gives you a view of all the counters which are interesting. One of them is the active concurrent sessions is something you may want to keep track of. It gives you an idea of how many mobile users and how many mobile sessions are ongoing. And push notification connectivity failures and UCY initialization failures. That's another thing which is you may want to keep track of. It gives you any you can have alerts and all generated out of it. I wanted to do a demo, but we are running out of time. Quickly, if you want to check your deployment, there are two synthetic transactions that we have. One is around UCIVA conference ST. The conference ST, what it does is it creates a conference, has two users who join into the conference. One of them is a mobile user, and he changes the status and sends an IM. That's one ST that you can run. And the other one is around the push notification ST. It is still called the MCX push notification. So even though it is calling MCX, you should just ignore it. And it's been there since the first version. What it does is it checks for connectivity between your on-premises deployment to the link online federation. Just make sure that the federation is set up. Once that is set up, your push notifications should go through. With that, let's quickly summarize. In terms of key takeaways for you as a user, with Skype for Business Server, you have reliable and synchronized conversations, contact management, ability to make a call to a Skype buddy. You also have now a single sign-on, as well as a variety of devices and platforms to choose from. One thing which should delight you is that we release updates almost every month now across the different platforms. In terms of an admin, you have the advantage of having a common infrastructure, so you can use most of the common tools can be reused for this service as well, and you do not have to take additional steps in terms of setup and all. You have granular controls in terms of policies, and obviously the multi-factor auth and the Intune integration also is there. One thing to keep in mind would be that we are releasing pretty often, even if it means a CU. So as you hear feedback from your users, you want to integrate those deployments in your enterprise as well. All right.
Yeah, just very quickly, you've seen the slide. Just want to mention the call to action. Everything we've mentioned, rides on Skype for Business Server 2015 or Skype for Business Online. And we need to publish the services, reverse proxy, edges, those kind of things. The path to the security, authentication, and control elements we've seen depend on ADFS and on Intune. So that's something that is important to start evaluating. With this, we'll probably have time for a couple of questions for the audience at large, and then we'll stick around as you see fit. And there's also, by the way, a few backup slides if you want to dig deeper in the deck later.
Can you repeat your question? Sorry, I forgot already. Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask, since it's going to be moving a lot, to use the microphone, otherwise we probably won't be able to hear you.
The question is, it's very simple.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is the microphone live?
Just 1 second. Yes, sorry. Otherwise, I'll take it off.
No switch.
Hey, there we go. So one of your slides, Francois, the data at rest, you were talking about the encryption and then the application PIN. You correct me if I'm wrong. You said that will be available regardless of whether or not you have Intune.
That is correct.
Where are those policies going to be? Are they actually going to be in the CS mobility policy? Because I didn't see it when you ran the get command.
They're not implemented yet.
Okay.
Again,
yes.
always
coming in a CU.
It will come along with the rebranded release of the mobile clients. You'll have the policy as well.
Perfect.
We can't comment officially on how it's going to be delivered, but you can guess.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Good catch.
We're taking a question on the microphone because of noise.
Yeah, okay. You said that you're switching to ADEL for authentication and abandoning NTLM. But that means, that's the problem. So because we ran into this logout issues, and so that means if there's one URL on the link server still using NTLM, then you're still able to log out, and that's a problem. So how do you approach that?
Very good question. So to be clear, we're not abandoning NTLM. We know that many of our customers don't want to use NTLM, and we give them preference and choices and so on.
Okay, good. So we can disable it completely.
That's my understanding. I've not verified specifically mechanically, but that's my understanding, yes.
Okay, good, perfect.
Yes.
There's one question there, is like, I think.
Yeah, so as my understanding for the UCMA server, if we want to, like if we have lots of integration, like for business application, we can have standalone UCMA server. But for the UCWA, is that part of the front-end pool, or it can be standalone?
It is not a standalone server. It is part of the front end. It's on one more service that runs on the same front end. For UCWA, that's true.
As my understanding that we're going to promote more people to use the UCWA platform.
Right. Yes.
Is there a consideration, because the UCMA has standalone option?
UCMA serves a different purpose. UCWA is, and actually the UCMA that UCWA uses is on the box, which is the FE. So UCMA for application scenarios and SDK scenarios, that's the reason we have a separate pool. In terms of scalability and all, we are making continuous investments in UCWA to make sure it is highly performant, and as we make better improvements, you'll see we add more and more clients to it.
Okay.
We're being notified that we're over time, so I think we need to move to taking questions at the podium. I apologize for that.